Like every scale, Phrygian Dominant has its own unique sound. In this lesson, we'll explore that sound and learn some of the ways it can be used in our music. Let's start by looking at the ingredients or intervals that make up the scale. Here we have the 12-tone chromatic scale, from which all scales on guitar are derived. In these initial examples, we'll be starting on the note C. Phrygian Dominant is a 7-tone scale, so that's 7 tones taken from the 12-tone chromatic scale. From the root or 1, its intervals are as follows: minor second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, and minor seventh. The presence of a major third and fifth on top of the root make up what is known as a major triad, the tonic chord of the scale, and which tells us the scale will work over major chords. But what gives Phrygian Dominant its distinctive sound is the minor second in relation to the major third. Let's hear this scale played in sequence over a major chord with the same root. As you can hear, it has a rather haunting, tense quality, mainly due to that minor second interval. This is why you'll hear it used in a lot of heavy metal, but it's found in several musical traditions, including flamenco, Middle Eastern, Jewish, Eastern European, Indian, and East Asian, where the scale is referred to under various names. To many Western ears, especially those accustomed to the more vanilla major scale, it's been described as an exotic sound and has often been used to spice up pop and rock. Let's take a moment to hear the difference between Phrygian and the major scale. As established, when accompanying music, Phrygian Dominant works over major chords. But using other tones from the scale, we can see that it would also work over 7th and extended chords, such as Dominant Seventh, Augmented, and flat 9 chords. You'll find chord tracks to encourage your exploration of this scale's sound on the lesson page. Let's just take a moment to look at how the scale forms on the fretboard. As with any scale, there are a number of patterns you can use, but a good place to begin for playing over single chords is with this 3 notes per string pattern. Looking at the fingering, it's quite a stretch from the minor second to major third on the 1st and 6th strings. So at lower frets, you might prefer to use this more condensed pattern. We'll look at more patterns and expanding the scale across the entire neck as we progress. Just use these initial patterns to get a feel for the scale. Phrygian Dominant has a modal function, which means it can be used as a harmonic system centered around its tonic chord. That means the scale can be used to build compatible chord changes and movements of harmony that invoke the Phrygian Dominant sound. Each degree of the scale has its own compatible chord, made up of the notes from the scale. So as Phrygian Dominant has 7 degrees, we have 7 compatible chords we can use in a sequence. The most commonly used chords in a Phrygian Dominant sequence are the 1, 2, 4, and 7 chords. For example, let's say C major was our key and C Phrygian Dominant is our scale. C major would be its tonic or root chord. But if we move each note of that tonic chord up 1 scale degree, we'd fall on the scale's 2 chord, a half step higher. D flat major in this case. You can either keep the bass note on C or move it to D flat with the change. This is a common movement you'll hear in flamenco music, but you'll also hear this movement using power chords. As these chords are an intrinsic part of the scale, you could play the same C Phrygian scale over both chords. Another common movement would be to the 7th degree of the scale, which would naturally fall as a minor chord, one whole step down from the tonic. In the harmonized C Phrygian scale, the 7 chord would be B flat minor. Combine the 1, 2 and 7 chords in a sequence and you'll get a typical Phrygian Dominant derived harmony. So it's useful to explore how movements of harmony and chords can be pulled from scales, known as harmonizing the scale, as well as single note melodies, as this will train your ears to hear when a particular scale will work. On the lesson page, you'll find these chords mapped out in several keys. Phrygian Dominant is the 5th mode of the harmonic minor scale. This means it begins on the 5th degree of the harmonic minor scale. So if we visualize the harmonic minor scale on the fretboard using this condensed pattern, its 5th degree would become the root of its 5th mode, Phrygian Dominant. Play from that 5th note of harmonic minor without any accompaniment and you'll hear the Phrygian Dominant scale. Therefore, both harmonic minor and Phrygian Dominant are intrinsically connected. A harmonic minor uses the same 7 notes as E Phrygian Dominant. C harmonic minor uses the same 7 notes as G Phrygian Dominant. Many musicians prefer to see Phrygian Dominant as its related harmonic minor pattern. Phrygian Dominant is typically used, or at least implied, whenever there is tension over a major or dominant 7th chord. This is because the scale itself carries a lot of tension. In minor keys, you'll typically hear movements between the minor tonic or 1 chord and the major 5 chord, also called the dominant, which is partly where Phrygian Dominant gets its name. For example, if we started on D minor and moved to A major, a lot of tension will be held in that A major chord. Therefore, Phrygian Dominant would be a good scale to use over that chord. To keep things simple, all we need to do is change from D natural minor to D harmonic minor to get the Phrygian sound over that 5 chord. Simply sharpen the 7th degree of the natural minor scale to get harmonic minor, and therefore its related Phrygian Dominant mode. Naturally, the 5 chord carries the most tension in major and minor keys, but there are a few other instances in which this major or dominant tension arises. For example, take this E major key progression that uses a G sharp 7 chord. Tension is created in that G sharp chord, so while E major or E major pentatonic would naturally work over the other chords, let's try changing to Phrygian Dominant over that G sharp chord. A simple way to see this change on the fretboard is to sharpen the 5th of the major scale to get Phrygian over the 3 chord. seems to complement the tension of the G-sharp chord nicely. You'll also hear a similar tension in major keys when the 6th chord is major, or more commonly, a dominant 7th chord. In the key of C major, that 6th chord would be A major or A7, such as in this example. So, a good rule of thumb is, whenever a major or dominant 7th chord creates tension, Phrygian Dominant will help to support and enhance that tension. So it's a good idea to train your ear to this sound. I've provided some examples of this on the lesson page. I've tried to keep this lesson as succinct as possible, and we've covered the main features and applications of Phrygian Dominant. But if you want to continue your exploration of this scale, visit the lesson page where you'll find chord tracks, diagrams, and tabbed examples. Cheers.